Hi, it's April.
And it's Missy, and this is the Sheelanagig podcast. Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. Each week, of course, we explore, present our own Sheelanagig, a woman whose strength and perseverance has led her to greatness and who empowers us, inspires us. Could be somebody you've heard of that you should maybe know more about, and we'd love to share that with you. Or it could be somebody you've never heard of that you should know about. So we definitely want to share that with you.
We do. And I have a question. I think this is something worth revisiting.
Okay, what are we revisiting, April?
Why do we call this podcast Sheelanagig? What's a Sheelanagig?
Oh, yeah. We haven't reviewed this in a while.
No, it's been a while.
I mean, if you go to our website, you can read about it. But yeah, let's review a little bit. Yeah. Let's review why our logo is a woman with a giant veggie.
Yes, please. Let's do that.
Well, basically, Sheelanagigs are these carvings. They're figurative carvings of naked women displaying an exaggerated vulva. Mm-hmm. They're, between like the 11th and 16th century, and Ireland to this day has the largest concentration of Sheelanagigs with more than 100 of them, but they used to be all over Europe.
Yeah.
Where they were also in, France, right?
Yeah, England, the UK, and
I think Spain as well.
Yeah.
Italy. Oh, and I think Norway too.
I believe you're right.
They were many places.
And what prompted us to name our podcast after those figures with the exaggerated vulvas?
Initially, these were thought of as disgusting, irreverent. People destroyed them, which is why there's only, 100 or less, left in Ireland. People just were really disgusted by them, so they were destroyed. But what scholars have realized over time, of course, is what, April?
Is that these are actually figures of female empowerment, fertility, creativity, and these exaggerated protection. Yeah, that's right. They were seen as protectors as well, that mother energy, and the celebration of all things feminine.
Yes,
and that
is unapologetic female empowerment.
In your face, not hidden, not obscured. And that's
big vagina energy, we like to call it.
Definitely.
Big vagina energy. Yeah.
And so that big vagina energy is why we call this the Sheelanagig podcast.
That's right. And if you came to one of our launch and listening parties, you probably got some nice vagina cookies.
That's right.
What else did they get, April?
Oh, and a pair of crotchless underwear to show off your exaggerated vulva and vagina.
Exactly. Like letting it all hang out. There's a lyric in the original, because you only hear like a little clip of the Sheelanagig song in the beginning, but there's a lyric from that which is, what once was hidden, now set free, unabashed in her glory.
Yes.
Sheelanagig, right? There you go. So, yeah.
So, which brings us to today, Missy, because every episode we share a Sheela, and it's Missy's turn, and I'm dying to know.
Yes.
Who's the Sheela you're bringing out of obscurity?
Well, I'm very, very excited. I'm very excited to share her with you. I will tell you this. This is kind of funny. My friend Angela came to our OC launch and listening party, and I saw her this weekend, and she told me about her daughter who, I think her daughter's like 14, 15, something like that. Uh-huh. And she got a younger daughter as well. So she said that, she got in the car with her mom and she was like, what are these? The crotchless underpants. And, and Angela was like, and I felt bad. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I should have warned you. She's like, no, just got to find out sometime. Right. And, so she said to her, she explained a little bit, what they were. She said, whatever you do, don't tell your dad. Don't tell your younger sister. But of course she there she's hanging out making dinner earlier. She hears them just cracking up. And she goes in and
sure enough.
And her daughter has them on like over her leggings, kind of like me in our Instagram video. That. Yeah.
And I have to say, when I saw you wearing them, I cracked up too.
Because I think you got it for the first time, right?
Yeah.
April, have you ever worn crotchless underpants?
I confess I still haven't tried mine on.
And never have you worn crotchless underpants?
Never.
Yeah.
It's definitely an experience.
Although I know what they are and I know how they work, I don't believe I have ever worn crotchless underpants either.
Except with your leggings on, I saw you.
Yeah, and now I just wear them regularly. Like, because I realized how awesome they are on over my leggings.
Oh.
So before I go to the grocery store, I just kind of throw
Just
them
this
on.
fashion statement.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
Missy is kidding, please.
No, people, you think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. But anyway, with no further ado.
Yeah, please.
We're going to jump into our Sheela of the day.
Please do.
Oh, I'm really excited about her. I get very excited about all of our Sheelas.
I know. I was working on mine. We were going to record two today, two episodes.
And what happened, April?
And I ran out of time. My Sheela really deserves time and attention, and you can't rush these things.
You can't rush them.
I came without my homework.
Yeah. And I was still working on mine when she got here. I was still in my pajamas. I hadn't brushed my teeth, or washed my face. I was like, don't.
10 o'clock in the morning.
I did warn her because I don't want her to get pissed off, but I felt a little bit off the hook because she was unprepared and I at least was able to finish mine. So I felt like, well, she can't get too pissed because,
Yeah, Missy wins the superiority contest for the day.
It's not a superiority contest. I'm just saying, I don't like April's wrath. Don't get on her bad side. I'm freaking telling you.
Well,
she's little, but she's mighty.
You've got some padding now because I royally screwed up.
No, it's fine. But it was very funny, too, because toward the end of it, I suddenly texted her because I thought, oh, my God, I bet you we're doing the same one because we don't discuss these ahead of time. And that's what happened with our very first
right?
Sheelanagig podcast. We both,
We both chose Madam C.J. Walker.
Yep. We did. So suddenly I was like, oh, shit. Are we both working on the same one? I got to check. And thankfully,
we weren't.
No. So anyway.
Okay, so who is she?
Okay. So we're going to talk about Mary Beatrice Davidson Kenner today.
Well, she certainly has a long name.
Yes. Have you ever heard of her?
Nope.
Okay. Well, she was born on May 17th, 1912 in Monroe, North Carolina. And she's an inventor. Mm-hmm. Another one of these amazing women inventors.
Sheilas are.
Yes. And she was the inventor of numerous products that we continue to use to this day and still has the most patents of any African-American woman.
Very impressive.
Very impressive, yeah. So I'm going to start out, her father was a preacher. Mm-hmm. He was also an inventor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and his name was Sidney Nathaniel Davidson. And Mary credited him with igniting her initial interest in discovering and inventing things because apparently he was always doing that and kind of bringing his kids into the action. And
nice.
So it was a very much, a part of her, family venture, part of her growing up. And this bums me out, but unfortunately Mary's mother is unknown to the public record.
Oh.
Which is kind of weird because usually when I realize often when we're doing these, usually find out who's the mom, who's the dad,
right.
And I couldn't find any mention of, her mother's name, and mothers are so important. So it kind of made me sad. I don't know why that is. But yeah, so she's unknown to the public record. Apparently, Mary also had one sibling, her sister Mildred Davidson Austin Smith, who was 4 years her elder, and who was also an inventor.
Oh.
And who would later gain some recognition, make a little money by designing and selling board games.
Oh, interesting.
Lizzie Maggie.
Maybe
she knew Lizzie Maggie.
Maybe
they were contemporaries. Maybe they were pals.
For those of you who don't know who Lizzie Maggie was or heard our episode on her, she invented the precursor to what we know of today as Monopoly.
That's right. And never got the credit for it. Some dude.
Yeah.
Some dude got the credit.
Got the credit and the money.
Yeah. Exactly. Charles Darrow, was that his name?
I believe that.
I wish I just forgot his name. Anyway, these are the little tributaries I go down because I always want to know, who are the siblings? What did they do?
Right.
TMI. I've always been accused of having TMI, but I seek TMI. I do.
It is. It's interesting. And like this case where the family were inventors, dad was an inventor, both sisters were inventors.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
So it looks like there may have been a brother as well.
Was he an inventor too?
Not that I know of. I found very little information, and I only found...
I'm so sorry. You know what's coming next.
Only found...
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Did he work at the dead letter office?
Oh, there you go.
It comes from Lizzie Maggie. I can't let go of it. And Lizzie Maggie had a million careers and jobs, and one of the things she did was she worked at the dead letter office, and I can't ever let it go. I'm letting it go. Go ahead.
She was a dead lettertress.
Yes, a big dead lettertress.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was her profession.
Among her accomplishments.
Yeah, no, she was not. She was many things, and that I shouldn't even say that. I shouldn't even make a joke. But anyway, so there is mention of this brother, which I will get to a little bit later on. And I only found one source that talked about him, but it was a pretty prevalent story. So it seems to me that maybe he was just not included in a lot of her history. So again, we'll get back to that.
All right.
So Mary was born into this family of inventors. I didn't even mention her maternal grandfathers, not even her paternal grandfather, because we were saying her father was also an inventor.
Yeah.
Her maternal grandfather was an inventor.
Oh.
His name was Robert Throneberger, and he invented the tricolor light signal for trains, though it's said that this invention was stolen from him by a white man, and he never got
the credit.
Yeah. Of course, we still see those to this day.
We do.
And he also apparently invented a stretcher with wheels for ambulances.
Wow.
But again, I don't believe he got the credit for it.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Not hard to believe, sadly.
No, we've seen
sadly,
a lot of
women, people of color, it's
definitely
just really prevalent and very sad. But I just think it's interesting that her maternal grandfather was also an inventor. And her father, I mentioned, was an inventor. He invented several things, but the main two things he invented was a clothing press that fit into a suitcase.
I love it.
And a window washer for trains.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, but again, not really getting his proper due.
Not getting his
unfortunately.
due. Yeah.
By age 6, Mary was reportedly already showing a knack for the family business when she couldn't sleep late in the mornings because of the door squeaking when her mom left for work. One morning, Mary asked, "Don't you think someone could invent a self-oiling door hinge?"
So she invented WD-40.
Right. Yeah. No. She wanted to invent... That's a spray.
She had the vision for it.
Yeah.
WD-40 is a spray, but some kind of device to stop the creaking.
Yeah, a self-oiling door hinge. It's so interesting. Like, I can't even imagine. And though she didn't succeed in its fabrication, she drew it up.
She had the vision.
Had the vision for it. And she went on, as a young child, she created plans for convertible roofs to go over folding rumble seats in cars.
Yeah.
A portable ashtray attached to cigarette packs.
I love it. Every cigarette pack should come with its own ashtray.
That's so handy, isn't it?
It is.
I think that's a great idea. And then a sponge tip that would go on the end of umbrellas to soak up the water when you put them down.
That's so clever.
I know. These are super clever things that just are nothing that I would ever think of.
No.
This is the difference between the inventor brain and, my brain.
Well, no, it shows a lot of ingenuity and a lot of logical thinking and creative thinking at the same time.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Exactly.
I have a feeling that's not what she was famous for. Or infamous for, because
famous. April, are you kidding me?
I know. I forgot which podcast we were doing.
What podcast we're doing? Oh my God! But when Mary continued to have a passion for innovation and creativity, when she was 12 years old, her family moved to Washington, D.C. Now she was very, very, very excited about this move, and that is because the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office is in Washington, D.C. So it was like a dream come true for her.
Wow. So it was part of her goal to always get a patent.
Yeah, from the time she was really young, and suddenly her family had this opportunity to move to Washington, D.C. And she already knew that's where, the trademark and patent office was. So she was absolutely thrilled. Once they moved there, she would spend hours, like after school, walking the halls to become familiar with the building and the patent process, knowing that this was her destiny.
Oh.
And the other thing this did is that it made it really easy to check if her inventions were already patented by someone else. And to her delight, she usually found out that her ideas were original and unique.
Well, good for her. That is very cool.
And it's kind of cool because when we think about it now, I think that it would be fairly easy to look that up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously
Well,
we have
yeah,
the internet, we have
today.
computers. So how perfect that she was able to move to Washington, D.C. Because I would imagine you would have to go in person or...
They must have known her. You know,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
young gal shows up and is constantly checking the patent list.
Yeah, exactly. Or
Yeah.
make some calls or, you would have to like figure that out and have a way to find out. And so now she had a way to find out.
Very cool.
Awesome. Okay, so in 1931, she graduated from Dunbar High School, and her cleverness and intelligence earned her a spot at the renowned and prestigious Howard University, an African-American college specializing in science and engineering.
Nice.
That is still known in existence today.
I believe very prominently, yeah.
And a little side note, in case you don't know of Howard University, in the 1930s, due to widespread racial segregation and limited access to higher education, there were very few African Americans who pursued undergraduate degrees, let alone went on to pursue science and engineering doctorates. So the vast majority of black students who did attend college during this period were enrolled in historically black colleges and universities, such as Howard University. But even there, opportunities for advanced study in STEM fields were severely restricted, especially if you were a woman.
Women, of course.
Yeah. You can kind of see where this might be going.
Yeah.
She got accepted. She studied at Howard. But sadly, after only a year and a half, she ended up dropping out.
Oh, how come?
Well, she had worked really hard and she was doing well, but college was very expensive and she was struggling to pay for it. And also she was unfortunately just subjected to a lot of gender discrimination.
That's so
And she felt like she was treated very differently compared to her fellow, male students.
male students, yeah.
And so it just, sadly,
A familiar story.
yes,
Yeah.
a familiar story for sure. And also to be noted, which there is very little information about, it looks like Mary had a daughter named Jasmine at some point during this time when she was presumably unwed. So Jasmine ended up being raised by her mother, Mary Kenner. So
Oh, okay.
that's when I heard the mention that her mother was named Mary.
So that was the first reference to her mother.
Yeah.
So
pretty
her
much.
mother was around, but just obscured, not really.
Yes. Yes.
explored.
And raised her daughter, Jasmine, as her own. Like I would imagine, Mary was fairly young and trying to get out into the world, and she was unwed. So it just made sense for her mother to raise her
claim her.
daughter.
Yeah.
But there's very little information about it.
Okay.
It's like one of those little things I found and then didn't find much else on it. So some of these things, I'm talking about them, but, they may or may not be true. And we'd love to hear your input, too. If you know a little bit more about Mary Kenner's mother, Mary,
Or her
Jasmine,
daughter, Jasmine, yeah.
we'd love to hear about it. So Mary continued, though, after she left Howard University, she continued to stay in Washington, D.C., and she worked various jobs to support herself. And during World War II, Mary found a job with the federal government. And she worked for the Census Bureau and the General Accounting Office. And she would also chaperone young women to attend military base dances in Washington, D.C.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's much more interesting than the dead letter office. I'm sorry I brought it up again.
Oh, my God.
But
April.
no, how do you become a chaperone to young women who are dating or...
I don't know. But she was a woman of service, and so I think they were looking for somebody to help out with this. And
Okay.
she probably volunteered. And so one night while she was chaperoning, she met and fell in love with a soldier. No mention of his name. I cannot tell you his name.
Aww.
But she was married to him for 5 years between
She was married to him
1945.
and there's no record?
No.
Oh, boy.
Isn't that
Okay.
crazy?
Yeah.
She was married to him between 1945 and 1950.
Okay.
She balanced multiple odd jobs until about 1950 when she was divorced. And that's when she became a professional florist.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. And she actually had saved up enough money by then to open her own florist shop.
Good for her.
And she continued inventing things in her spare time.
Nice. So did she have any patents by now or not yet?
Not yet. We're getting there, April. Don't
Okay.
get ahead of yourself.
Oh, yeah, I know. She
Have you ever worked at a
collected
florist
quite a
before?
few. Yes, I have.
Really? We've never talked about this.
Really?
No.
Well, when I went to high school, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but I studied horticulture. My high school in New York City, John Bown High School, has an agricultural and horticultural program, and I studied horticulture.
And you've never told me this.
No, it was.
Is
Well,
that
that's
how-
how
is
we
that-
ended
is
up
that-
on a farm.
Oh, right. That's true.
Yes.
Is that how you knew what a viticulturist was, too?
No, I think I did some research on that occupation years
Okay.
on behalf of a client. But yeah, I had to make all these flower arrangements, and at one point I did get a job doing piecework. That's when you get paid for whatever flower arrangements you make. And so speed and design are both important. I didn't design them, I just followed the design. I made duplicates.
Oh my God, I can't believe we've never talked about. How long did you do that for?
Just a few months. It wasn't a big
Okay.
job, but yeah.
And then you came out to LA and worked on a farm.
Well, no, that was still while I was upstate New York.
Oh.
And then they sold the farm, the wonderful family that I went to work for when I was 17. And they became my second family. And when they sold the farm and moved to California, I followed them here after college.
Oh, that's how you met Nancy and family.
Yeah, when I went to work on their farm.
I always thought that you came out here and
Yeah.
that's when you met them. But you met them in upstate New York. Oh,
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are friends to April. you know.
Very dear friends, and they were originally out in California, but they bought a family farm from Jerry, the husband's family. His mother remarried, and they had the farm. And then when Russell, the farmer, died, they decided to try their hand at farming and move to upstate New York. But boy, are we on a tangent.
No, but it's fine. I think it's very interesting. I didn't realize that. But before you moved out here, you went to college in
Boston.
Right.
And I started upstate New York at an agricultural school called Skill College. And I transferred to Emerson in Boston.
and
And
learning new things about April every day.
every day.
Every day.
Every day.
I worked for a florist.
Did you?
Yeah, we've never talked about
We
this.
never talked about it.
I worked at a place called the Nature Nook in Ferndale, Michigan. And I became very competitive with myself over how many roses I could clean in a shift.
Yes, production. Speed and production was very
I became
important.
very hyper-focused on how many roses I could clean. I was always
So
in
do you
competition with
remember?
myself. I don't, but I got really good at it. And I eventually became a floral consultant. So sometimes they
Wow.
would send me out to look at people's offices and make recommendations for
Look
like
at
foliage for
that.
like different
How long
plants.
did you do this?
I'm gonna say like a year or two.
Wow.
I was working 2 waitressing jobs at the time as well. This is right after college. So I think I had 3 jobs. I think I worked at an Irish tea room. I worked at a restaurant in downtown Detroit, and then I also worked at the Nature Nook.
Well, you were busy.
Yeah, I always had 3 jobs at a time. I didn't like having any spare time in those days. But one of my favorite stories about the florist is, because you probably remember this, a lot of times I'd be, working the front desk and somebody would come in and there'd be some guy with his, tail between his legs. And
It needs flowers.
I'd be like, okay, what did you do? What do you need? And one time this guy came in and I said, okay, what did you do? And he said, well, I had sex with my wife's sister.
Uh-oh.
And I said, ain't no bouquet's gonna fix that, dude.
Turn around. There's nothing in here for you.
I don't think so. But but anyway, that's so funny. We've never talked about
No,
this.
we never did.
Now all of
Things
you
you
know
learn.
about our floral history as well. But yeah, she was a florist.
Yeah.
She went on to open actually, I think 4 stores.
Wow.
Yeah, so
she
she
was
was-
a real entrepreneur.
She was, and she was a successful florist.
Good
so,
for her.
And then in 1951, that was the year after she opened her first floral shop, she ended up marrying a retired and renowned heavyweight boxer. His name was James Jabbo Kenner.
Jabbo, get it.
It must be Jabbo, right?
Jabbo. Right?
Jabbo. He was making jabs. Jabbo. And she moved to McLean, Virginia to be with him, and they began fostering children together. They fostered 5 children in all, and one of those children they ended up adopting, their son Woodrow. And by the way, I had to look it up because I was like, okay, so she moved all the way from Washington D.C. to Virginia, and then What?
Well, Virginia isn't that far from
See,
DC.
I'm not an East Coaster.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's
So-
not that far.
14 miles.
But I can't help myself. Woodrow Jabbo?
Oh, you're right. You're right. Woodrow Jabbo.
Well, I guess Jabbo is just a nickname.
My dad's name is Jabbo, and my name is Woodrow. But yeah, it's only 14 miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because here, this is my brain, April. This is
Right.
what happens to me.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so where did she meet Jabbo? You know, if he lived all the way in Virginia
All the way
and she
13
lived in
miles
Washington,
away.
D.C., where did they ever cross? Like what?
Missy, we're going to have a little geography lesson, but
I-
not on the air.
I know. But, you know, I was a little relieved when I found I had to look that
Yes.
up. Okay, 14 miles. And so she met Jabbo. And, but of course, again, no information about how they met.
Yeah.
And that's an important story to me.
I know. This
wanna
is very
hear-
spotty. Yeah.
It's spotty. And I don't know if some of it is because she was a woman of color.
yeah.
Because I feel like there's a lot of details missing
Well,
here.
it's interesting that you mentioned that because I am still working on my Sheila, who happens to also be a woman of color. And again, I had a lot of trouble getting some basic facts.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that there's a connection there, but it is very disheartening.
Yeah, it's disheartening. It is. There should be, I want another story. I want, all of it. So anyway, I do not know how she and Jabbo met.
Okay.
It's a little weird though.
What?
Little side note.
Yeah.
Do you ever talk to, like this happens to me somewhat frequently, especially when I was a younger person, because,
Yeah.
you'd say to somebody, oh, how did your parents meet? I have no idea.
You don't know how your parents met?
No, that's what people would say. I have no idea.
Oh.
And that would happen.
Okay.
kinda
I will
often.
say,
Yeah.
it does happen often. Not everybody is as inquisitive as you are.
But come on, you don't know how your own parents met? And I'm sorry, no judgment. If you don't know how your parents met, I will suggest go find out. But no judgment, but I will suggest go find out. But
Missy,
I can't believe,
my husband doesn't know exactly how his parents met, but I do.
I was going to say, but you do, right?
Of course I do. Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, let's get back to Mary.
Okay.
I want to find out what happened.
All right,
Why
anyway.
is Mary famous or
How did your parents
not
meet?
famous?
How did your parents meet, real quick?
My parents met on a blind date.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know how his parents met.
How did they meet?
Well, they were all in a gang of friends together.
They were in a
So-
gang together?
Well, not a gang like a gang, but they were a group of people that knew each other, and so they sort of fell in line as a couple. But moving right along...
Aren't you going to ask me how my parents met?
Okay, Missy, how did your parents meet? I'm dying to know about more
Well,
about Mary.
my mom worked at Montgomery Wards, which
Yes.
she used to call Monkey Wards.
Keywords.
And her dad was he was a prosecuting attorney, and he was the town judge in a small town in northern Michigan, Alpena, Michigan. And so everybody knew who my mom was and my mom's family, and there she was working at Monkey Wards, and my dad walked in and fell immediately in love with my mother. He saw her working behind the counter, and it was love at first sight, he said.
Aww.
And then somebody said, oh, you can't ask her out. Don't you know who that is? That's the judge's daughter. You can't. And he realized that he had actually appeared in front of the judge before for multiple car-related things. And but he took a chance and he asked her out. He was she was right before she left for college, and then they dated throughout college pretty much. Yeah.
Well, very
And
cool
married.
story.
Yeah. Anyway.
Back to
So-
Mary. Yes.
Okay. So in 1951, again, she married Jabbo, and again, they moved to McLean. They had 5 kids. I think it's great that they fostered
that
children
They fostered.
and adopted.
Yeah.
Again, we mentioned we're both families
Right.
of adoption.
There you are.
And do you think Jabbo was a support bro?
Well,
I can't resist. I'm throwing that in for you. Jabbo was a really good guy. So I feel like,
Yay.
but I feel like he was a good man. I'm
Yeah.
not going to call him a support bro. I'm going to call him a good man. He was a really good man.
Right.
And he actually had to retire from boxing in 1943. So before she ever met him, he was already retired from boxing. He had been diagnosed in 1943 with tuberculosis. Ooh. And he became a community leader at that time.
Oh, nice.
And really dedicated his life to mentoring young boys. Mm-hmm. And he eventually started what was called the Kenner League. And it was... he was also the first director of the Metropolitan Boys Club in 1937 in Washington.
So he really was a good
That's
guy.
what I mean. He was just a great guy.
Yeah.
It makes sense, too, that he would want to foster
Right. And
adopt. Yeah. So throughout his life, he continued, working as a coach, a friend, a mentor to 3 generations of DC schoolboys.
Nice.
So very, very impressive guy.
Yeah.
And they were married up until his death. So we'll talk about that. So yeah. Good relationship. And she continued to grow her floral business. While being a wife, a mother to 4 foster children, her adopted son, she eventually, as I mentioned, opened and operated 4 other flower shops scattered around the DC area, all while continuing to invent things. This is like a reoccurring theme with these women. They never do just one thing.
Most of our Sheelas do so many different things, amazing things, multiple accomplishments. It's really true.
Yeah, it's true. They do a million things, and she is no exception. So she ended up obtaining her first patent. Here we go. For the adjustable sanitary belt.
Oh.
A device that secured sanitary napkins in place.
Okay.
It's very important.
It is important.
Yeah.
For anybody who's ever had a cycle, and had to wear those old napkins, right?
Yeah, and some
before
of you,
the sticky stuff.
Yeah, some of you may never have, in fact, I never had to wear them. I knew of them.
Yeah.
But,
I confess, I knew of them too, but I also was spared that indignity.
Yes. My mom had one. I remember she had one. I remember finding it as a kid and being like, what's this? And she kind of explained it to me. I'm like, oh my God. Kenner came up with the idea of a belt to hold a menstrual towel. Back in the 1920s, she came up with this idea.
Wow.
So she was quite young. I read somewhere that she was 8 years old when she came up with that idea, but I don't know. I didn't even know what a period was, when I was 8. But I don't know. Maybe she was very precocious, so who knows. But they did say that this is something that was brewing in her brain for a very long time, but that it was not until 1957 that she was able to raise enough money for the expense of the patent process, which is quite expensive, from my understanding.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. So before the mid-century, these pads, by and large, weren't disposable either. Women commonly used cloth or other methods to trap menstrual blood. Keeping these less formal applications in place was a reoccurring, frustrating, and often an embarrassing issue. It's so gross.
Yeah, it is.
It just sounds horrible.
Right.
Horrible. This is horrible. This is horrible. So the shifting cotton cloths could occasionally become a hygienic concern. Right. And of course it would lead to leaks and chafing and irritation.
All kinds of issues. Yeah.
Is this TMI?
I think it's a common experience among women.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all been caught where we maybe started our periods and didn't have something and
been caught, right?
And tried to jerry-rig something and ended up with chafing, staining, and other forms of disastrousness. Totally. So, yeah.
But her invention helped put kind of an end to a lot of this. And sanitary belts weren't necessarily something new, with the use of the tool being traced at least back to the 1800s, they say.
Yeah.
But Kenner's work improved upon the design and kind of brought that design to fruition. And of course, in those days, menstruation too was a taboo subject, which it still kind of is.
Yeah.
But most men at the time likely had little idea or concern over what women went through every month, and probably that's still kind of true.
I think a little less now.
Well, it depends if they're some more brower now.
Right.
But at this time, women were culturally encouraged to present themselves as perfect, and and beautiful and feminine
and unflawed,
and, to resist complaining about anything. And certainly they weren't going to complain about it.
My sanitary napkin going south down my leg. Sorry.
Refrain from these unpleasant conversations. Yes. But women, ultimately were very dissatisfied. They were dissatisfied, with the size, the thickness, the stiffness, and Kenner's belt was the solution to those issues. It was really a remarkable invention, I'm reiterating here. And it really helped to keep menstruation from staining your clothing. And it was effective for just keeping everything in place, which is never the case up until then. So basically the belt wrapped around a woman's waist, and it included 2 straps, one in the front, one in the back, and these straps would end in the clips meant to clip that cotton rag into place.
Gotcha.
And it also, she made that belt adjustable, allowing, again, women of all sizes to be able to use it comfortably. And she also did away with the clips, eventually connecting the middle strap. So
got better. Yeah,
it got better, or she
kept
continued to develop it.
Yeah.
So again, this is in 1957, and shortly thereafter, it wasn't too long until the Son Knappack Company took an interest in Mary's invention.
Ooh.
And they called her and they made an appointment to speak with her and come visit her because they were interested in potentially marketing this amazing idea.
Oh, this is exciting.
I know. This is exciting. So Mary said about this time in her life, she said, this is quote, "One day I was contacted by a company that expressed this interest in marketing my idea, and I was so jubilant. I saw houses, cars, everything about to come my way. A representative made their way to Washington, to my home, and sat down to speak with me. And then she continues to explain that they had rejected her by saying, sorry to say, when they found out that I was black, their interest dropped. The representative went back to New York and informed me that the company was just no longer interested."
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine?
How crushing.
Isn't it just crushing?
Yeah. You know, unfortunately, yeah, I can imagine, but still it's crushing.
I mean, they didn't tell her, but they didn't have to tell her.
They didn't have to tell her.
You know, they started out with this enthusiasm. They drove all the way, they drove to her house, sat down with her in the living room, and then
dropped it.
Isn't that just crushing? That is the word for it, crushing.
It is crushing.
It sucks. But it didn't stop her, though. It did not stop Mary Kenner from continually updating her inventions. 3 years later, in 1960, she filed another patent, and this time it was a moisture-proof sanitary belt.
Oh, nice.
So she created a pocket, making it even more unlikely for blood to leak onto clothing. So she was just constantly updating, making it better. And of course, other companies, started out interested but were reluctant to work with her based on the color of her skin.
So mad.
And eventually her patent expired, like so many of these women we've heard about.
We hear about this all the time. Yeah.
And ultimately, it allowed manufacturers to profit off her idea, and Kenner never made any money from the belt itself.
So crushing.
Yeah.
I'm really sad to hear that. Not surprised. We've told this story before.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And every time it's so discouraging. It's so maddening.
It is.
And I always think, why did they get discouraged? Why didn't they just update the patent?
I think you nailed it, though. It is expensive. It's
expensive. It's discouraging. You forget about it.
Why do you keep putting something into something that gives you nothing back?
Yeah. I know. I know. But it's just, if she had just been able to keep her name on it long enough. I don't know. Instead, like I said, her patent lapsed, despite, again, its comfort and its hygienic value. Nope. Never worked out for her. And it still remained her most notable invention, but she did invent some other things. And she continued to work as a florist, as I mentioned. I want to talk a little bit about Mary's sister, Mildred, who we heard about earlier, who was 4 years her senior.
Right, and she was an inventor, too.
She was. She was. And apparently the two of them brainstormed a lot throughout their life. They were very close, and they, in fact, brainstormed on the sanitary belt and other things. And her sister really took an interest in board games, as we mentioned before.
Yeah.
And so they would bounce things off of each other. They would help each other. They never admitted to fully co-creating something, but just that they really operated as a brainstorming team. And apparently, though, and this is only one source out of so many, you know how many sources I found?
Yeah.
This is only one little source I found, but I thought this was a little interesting tidbit side note.
Yeah.
And I'd like this to be true because it's a good story. But apparently Mildred had been this wonderful singer. And so in the mid-1930s, when she was attending Dunbar High School, she joined her brother.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the mention of her brother,
right?
Which has never been mentioned anywhere else. And it says one of her sisters. Now, as far as everything else I could tell, it sounded like she never had any brothers and she only had one sister.
So it could be Mary.
Yeah, and this other sister could be Mary, but it sounds like from this that she had more than, I don't know. Anyway, it's a little annoying, again, if anybody can shed some light here. But anyway, so she joined her brother and one of her sisters in a trio called Perry and his sisters. So guess what her brother's name was probably?
Perry.
Very
interesting. Okay.
Can't really find anything on old Perry.
Ah.
So I'm going to quote her now. Mildred says, "We were among the first blacks to sing on the radio. The first time the trio went to WL radio station to perform, they told us that we had to ride the freight elevator up to the station." Can you believe that?
Yeah, there was a lot of that weird, crazy
Freaking
stuff.
unbelievable. So unfortunately, Mildred developed multiple sclerosis along the way, and I believe it was in the 1960s that she was diagnosed with it. So my understanding then is that perhaps she had continued to be a singer throughout a lot of her life, and she had also been an inventor. But are you looking up something?
I was trying to look up Perry and his sister.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens when you do the podcast. I'm like, I know she's looking up something from the story. No, it's so fine. That's what I do too when you're telling a story. Tell us what you find about old Perry.
Nothing yet.
I know. Perry's last name would have been Davidson. It would be Perry Davidson. So anyway, I presume just from everything I read that she was diagnosed in the 1960s with multiple sclerosis. That kind of put a damper on her singing career, but she did continue to be an inventor at that point. In 1976, so again, we're kind of jumping ahead here, talking about the 60s,
Yeah.
talking about how her sister developed, multiple sclerosis. And Mary also continued to open those shops throughout the 70s. So she was opening her floral shops and being a florist and still inventing things. But in 1976, she really felt this need to help her sister out. Her sister's condition was worsening. And she patented an attachment for a walker or a wheelchair that included a hard surface tray and a soft pocket for carrying items that allowed Mildred, dignity of moving herself and her belongings, around and not needing the, constant assistance.
Right.
So that was kind of empowering to Mildred. And that was something Mary really loved to do. She was constantly kind of seeing problems and then coming up with solutions, inventions.
Practical solutions.
Yeah, for herself and her family, for the community around her.
Did she patent that idea? Those
She did.
ideas?
She did.
And did they go anywhere?
Not from my understanding. No. But again, we've seen those things.
Right.
My dad had one of those pockets on his wheelchair.
My mother too.
And then in 1982, Mary Kenner also invented a toilet paper holder. And she and Mildred brainstormed it. And then she went ahead and patented it. And again, she kind of invented this with Mildred's inspiration because she wanted to create a toilet paper holder that was always in reach, that it would catch the paper, the loose end of the paper, and make it easier to use. It was especially helpful for people who had arthritis, for people who were blind.
Yeah.
And it's still used today.
Wow.
So you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
I'm gonna. It's the one that you see kind of at airports and stuff. It's got the cover on it, so there's no guessing where it starts. Or it's that's what it is. If you see the picture, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So it's very common today, still commonly being used, and sadly, she never profited from it.
Again.
I know.
Oh, Missy.
In 1980, Mary's sister Mildred invented a game, though, that actually got some recognition.
Oh.
It was called Family Tree Edition.
Family Tree Edition?
Get it?
Oh, yeah.
Like
very
Family
cute.
Tradition, but
Right.
Family Tree Edition.
Right, got it.
That's a clever name.
Very clever.
And it's a family board game. She had said, because of her multiple sclerosis, that she could do little more than lie there and think. So she started to come up with these ideas, and this was her most successful game. I tried to find out how successful it was, and came up with, as of today, there's no public information about the exact amount of money this board game made, since it's not widely known as a mainstream game. It's not readily accessible because it's considered, I guess, kind of a niche game, and it did have a dedicated following, though, and supposedly it generated a moderate revenue within its market segment.
Okay. All right.
So, that sounds somewhat promising. I don't know.
A little bit.
Yeah. So sadly then, in 1983, Jabbo passed away, and could not find how or what he passed away from, but he ended a lifetime dedicated to helping people in the Washington metropolitan area. He was very well known big funeral. People spoke very highly of him. Mary's final patents were granted in 1987. And again, things that were inspired by her sister. A mounted backwasher and massager that could be mounted to a shower wall.
Oh, clever and practical.
Yeah,
That's the theme. She was really clever and really... Is she still alive today?
No, she passed away in 2006, I believe.
But she just seems so clever and practical at the same time.
I know.
Those inventions were all things that just were about maneuvering the body in a very common but logical and helpful way.
And she did make all these things apparently, like she created prototypes, so her sister was able to at least use them and take advantage of.
That's of course not the story we want to hear.
No.
But just glad her sister benefited from her.
Yeah, exactly.
talents.
And in her inventions, they offered comfort and autonomy.
Yeah.
For people, and I that's so important. And then in 1993, Mildred Smith passed away, but not before seeing her game manufactured in several fashions, including in the Braille language.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
So that,
little
little silver lining, little something, something.
And what about Mary?
Well, Mary never stopped inventing. And in her lifetime, she secured 5 patents.
Wow.
And I think I mentioned earlier the most of any black woman to this day. Again, though, because of racial discrimination, because of gender discrimination, companies just refused to manufacture or market any of her products.
But she did have a successful career in her florist business.
She did. And
she was an entrepreneur.
She was an entrepreneur. She opened 4 stores. She had a great marriage with a wonderful husband.
Right.
She fostered children.
They did a lot in the community.
So I don't think by any standard she would say that she did not have a good life. Like I think she was very grateful for the life she had. I mean, it was disappointing.
Well, I think your point earlier is that our Sheelas are remarkable women, very accomplished, very bright, having far-reaching or broad interests, and this Sheela is no exception.
Yeah.
Even though her patents didn't get to take off or they weren't picked up by manufacturers, she definitely had the vision, talent, execution, and
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting because some of these Sheelas we've talked about, a common thread that we have kind of noticed is that often these women remain unmarried, not in relationships, not having children, which is all fine. It's, a choice or whatever. But almost because they are so dedicated to inventing, that becomes kind of their life.
Their mission, yeah.
And in that case, I would think it would be even more sad that you would never achieve any recognition because you're putting all those eggs in one basket almost, you know. Whereas at least I think in Mary Kenner's case, and I'm not trying to make excuses here because I think it sucks that she was never acknowledged, but how wonderful that she still had this wonderful life and she was successful.
In many regards.
In many regards.
As an entrepreneur, as a member of a community.
Exactly.
As a visionary.
As a mother, as a wife.
As a sister.
Yes, as a sister, definitely. Yeah, so it's...
And possibly as a singer, we're not sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If anything, I think she was the backup singer in the Perry band. So
we might be making that up, though.
we don't know. Yeah. So to review, this is another thing. So it said 5 inventions. Help me out here if anybody can help me out with this.
Okay, so we had the belt.
Yes.
We had the pocket for the wheelchair. We had a tray. Oh my gosh, there was the ashtray with the cigarettes.
Yeah, but that one never was patent.
That never was patent. Okay,
no, that's when
I got 3.
She was like 6 years old at the time.
Oh, okay. She was very clever.
She needed an ashtray for her cigarettes at 6 years old.
At 6.
Come on.
We all.
Yes.
All right, what were the 2 other patents?
Well, this is what's interesting.
Yeah.
This is how, and I looked this up many times, and I want very distinctly to know what were those 5 inventions. Okay, we have the sanitary belt, which of course was the most widely recognized to this day. The toilet paper holder.
Right, the toilet paper holder.
Now this is where it gets a little weird. So they combine the walker with attached tray and pocket.
Okay.
Okay, so that's number 3. Now this is where it gets weird. Number 4 is mounted backwasher and massager.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what 5 is?
What?
Shower wall mounted backwasher.
So maybe it was a different version of it.
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess, yeah.
So maybe one was like mounted, like a mounted one on the shower wall, and the other one was just, well, it said it was mounted. What else would it have been mounted to? Anyway.
Maybe she had, well, obviously she had 2 separate patents, so there was something different.
There was something different. Help us out here. See, these are the kind of things we want to hear from you on.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what her 5th one was. I can explain that to you. Yeah, we would love
But I'm really struck by her desire to help people just manage their bodies in an easier, more comfortable way.
I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She's just, just an amazing gal. And sadly, she did pass away in 2006. She was 93 years old.
Oh, she lived a long time.
She never received any awards or fame.
Oh, no
or
recognition.
Wealth during her lifetime. But obviously, her inventions are still around today, making an impact on all of our lives.
That's right. And she's been featured here at the Sheelanagig podcast.
And I looked her up because I was thinking, oh, there must be books on her. There must be a TV, some kind of documentary or
something.
TV-inspired series or, and only, well, all I could find, and again, I could be wrong, but it looked like she has been in many compilations about inventors.
Ah, yeah.
Both on TV and in books, but it doesn't seem like there's ever been one just about her.
Yeah.
So, April, I think we might be on a quest here. I think we might have a new quest.
A new quest,
to
a new project.
do a Mary Kenner documentary. That would be good. Yeah, Mary Kenner documentary.
We don't make documentaries, but
well,
but other than
maybe
that,
that's what we'll do next.
Okay.
Yeah. But she never stopped. She broke these boundaries down. And again, we talk again about she never really had any formal training.
Right.
I mean, well, she
she
went
did go
a year and a half at Howard.
At Howard University.
But she was not considered educated. After 18 months, she dropped out.
Yeah.
But this is something that she was really learning and improving from the time she was very young.
Well, again, that's been another common theme in our Sheelas, is that they aren't always necessarily trained, but they just train themselves and develop on their own. A lot of initiative.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, it would be nice to see her receive some recognition. How we read about a lot of these women who never received it in their lifetime, but then suddenly they received an award. And so I think we need to petition for Mary Kenner to receive some kind of award.
Yeah, recognition for her ingenuity.
This might be something to add to our list.
All right.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. And obviously as women, thank you for the sanitary napkin pad that eventually led to better things.
And the toilet dispenser that actually makes it easy to get your paper cleanly.
Yes.
Yep.
No, we're very grateful to Mary Kenner. And again, we would love to hear your input. Please tell us.
Please share. And if you're an inventor, let us know what you're doing. We'd love to know that too.
Yeah, we would. We'd love to just hear comments, to hear questions, to have you fill us in on some of those holes we had today, because there were some holes.
There were quite a few.
This happens sometimes. So, but thank you for listening. And until next time, bye.
Bye.